"Here, Baba, take this before it gets cold." He looked up slowly, his eyes, dark, steady, the kind that had seen a great many things and forgotten very few, met hers over the rim of the paper cup she was holding out. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know," Dzifa said. "That's why I do it." She had first noticed him on a Tuesday morning in October, the kind of gray October morning that Toronto does better than anywhere else in the world. A sky the color of old pewter, a wind off Lake Ontario that found every gap in your coat. He was sitting on the wooden bench outside her salon, the one she had put there for clients waiting to be called in. He wore a heavy canvas jacket, faded brown, and work boots that had seen better years. No hat, a thermos beside him empty. He was not sleeping, he was not asking for anything. He was just sitting, watching the morning traffic on Eglinton West, with the patience of a man who had nowhere better to be. Dzifa almost kept walking. She had a 6:30 appointment, an inventory order to confirm, and a brother's tuition receipt to file before 9. She had exactly the right number of things on her plate, none to spare. But she stopped. There was something in the way he sat, not hunched, not defeated, upright, attentive. The way her mother used to sit on the veranda in Accra before dawn, watching the street come to life as though the world were putting on a performance just for her. Dzifa went back inside, poured a second cup from her personal thermos, the good one, the Ghanaian ginger tea she brewed at home every morning, wrapped a piece of kelawele in foil from the batch she had made for her own breakfast, and walked back out. "Here, Baba," she said, "take this before it gets cold." Something crossed his face, not quite a smile, something older and quieter than a smile. He took the cup. He took the foil-wrapped kelawele. "My name is Dzifa," she said. "Mawuli, just Mawuli." "Well, just Mawuli." She pulled her coat tighter against the wind. "That bench is there for my clients. But you are welcome to it any morning you want." She went back inside and did not think about it again. Not much, anyway. He came back the next morning and the next. By the end of the first week, it was simply what happened at 6:45 on Eglinton West. Dzifa opened Amma's braids, put on her kettle, brewed her tea, made 2 cups, wrapped whatever she had brought from home, kelawele or bofrut or groundnut bread, and brought 1 portion out to the bench. Some mornings they talked, some mornings they didn't. Dzifa had learned early that silence with the right person is not empty. It is full of different things. By the second week, the conversations found their depth. The salon Mawuli said one morning, holding his cup in both hands, "Your mother's name?" "Amma," Dzifa said. "She passed 4 years ago. She used to braid hair in Kumasi. Market days, naming ceremonies, every occasion you can think of. She said braiding was praying with your hands. You put your intention into every plait." She sounds like a woman worth naming something after. She was worth naming everything after. Mawuli was quiet for a moment. "My father had a saying. He was a farmer in the Volta region. He used to say, 'The river does not drink its own water, and the tree does not eat its own fruit. Everything we have is meant to flow through us, not stop with us.'" Dzifa looked at him. "My mother said almost the same thing. She said a good cook never locks the pot." Mawuli smiled then, a real one, and it changed his face entirely. A cook's daughter and a farmer's son sitting on a bench in Toronto. "Life is something, isn't it?" "It is," he said. "It really is." Dzifa Agiman was 32 years old. She had come to Toronto from Accra at 19, sponsored by a distant auntie who had given her a couch, a transit pass, and 6 weeks before she needed to find her own footing, she had done it. She had found footing and built a floor on top of it and put up walls around it, slowly with her hands. Amma's braids had started in her kitchen. Then it moved to a rented chair in a shared salon on Bathurst. Then 3 years ago, she had signed her own lease for the small unit on Eglinton West. A single room, 2 styling chairs, a wash basin, and a hand-lettered sign in the window she had painted herself, "Amma's Braids." Made with love, made with intention. She worked 12-hour days. She did cornrows, knotless braids, faux locks, Senegalese twists. Her clients drove from North York, from Mississauga, from Brampton, because Dzifa's hands remembered what her mother had taught them. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on Dufferin, the kind where the heat came on when the radiator decided it was ready and not before. She shared it with her younger brother, Kojo, 21, in his third year of engineering at York University. Kojo had their mother's eyes and their father's stubbornness, which meant he was brilliant and never asked for help. Dzifa paid his tuition, his transit pass, and half his textbooks. She did it without telling him the full amount, because Kojo, if he knew, would try to get a second job, and a second job would cost him the grades that were supposed to carry him further than either of them had gone. She ate lunch at her styling station. She skipped dinner twice a week. She told Kojo she had eaten at the salon. It was not a lie, exactly. It was a kind of arithmetic only a sister understands. She had one meal that was truly hers. Her morning tea and her kelawele, made fresh each day from a recipe their mother had pressed into memory like a dried flower between pages, until Mawuli sat down on her bench and she started splitting it in two. Kojo noticed eventually. "Sis," he said one Sunday morning, "you're getting thin." "I'm busy." "You're always busy. This is different." He looked at her closely. "Are you eating?" "Kojo, I'm fine." Mama would have said the same thing, and she would have also been wrong. Dzifa turned away so he wouldn't see her face. "Go study," she said. "Your thermodynamics midterm is Thursday." Kojo didn't push further, but he started leaving fruit on the kitchen counter every morning before he left for class. An orange or a banana or whatever was in the bowl. Dzifa ate it. She did not tell him it was sometimes the only thing she had before 6 p.m. By the third week, Mawuli asked about her brother. "Engineering," Dzifa said. "Third year. He wants to design water treatment systems, clean water infrastructure for communities that don't have access." An idealist. A realist who also happens to be idealistic. There's a difference. Mawuli chuckled. It was a warm sound. "And who pays for this realist's education?" Dzifa was quiet for a moment. "He has a bursary, and he works summers. And his sister helps." It wasn't a question. She looked at him. "You haven't bought yourself a coffee in 3 weeks," Mawuli said. "You bring 2 cups every morning. You bring food you made at home. You are not a woman with extra." He paused. "You are a woman who gives from what she doesn't have." "Mawuli, I'm not saying it to embarrass you. I'm saying it because I haven't seen it in a very long time. Someone giving without calculating, without wondering what returns." Dzifa wrapped her hands around her cup. The ceramic was warm. The morning was not. "My mother said if you wait until you have enough to be generous, you will wait your whole life. Enough never comes. You give from what you have. That's all there is." Mawuli looked out at the street, at the buses, the dog walkers, the early shift workers filing past the storefronts one by one. "Dzifa," he said quietly, "you are extraordinary." "I'm a woman with 2 styling chairs and a thermos." "Yes," he said, "that is exactly what I mean. Before I tell you what happened on the 42nd morning, before I tell you about the black Escalade that turned the corner onto Eglinton West and changed everything, stop here for just a moment. If you have ever been the person who gives from an empty cup, who splits the last piece without saying so, who holds someone else's life steady while your own is shaking, this story is for you. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications. Because what comes next, I promise you, is the ending you always knew generosity deserved. Now, let me tell you about Craig Holloway. Craig Holloway was 54 years old and owned 6 commercial properties along Eglinton West. He considered himself a businessman in the same way a man who never works the land considers himself a farmer. He owned the strip mall where Ama's Braids operated. He also owned the Jamaican patty shop next door, the alterations place at the end of the row, and the West African grocery across the small parking lot. Craig was not bad the way bad weather is bad, without intention. He was bad the way a calculation is bad, deliberate, precise, indifferent to what it leaves out. He raised rents when he knew tenants had nowhere else to go. He delayed repairs until they became crises. He charged fees that appeared in no lease, justified in no document, but showed up in statements at the end of the month like small, polite robberies. His tenants paid because they had no choice. Then a development company came calling. $22 million for the strip mall and the adjacent lots. A glass tower, ground floor retail with starting rents that would clear out every current business before the paint was dry. The developer had one condition: vacant possession. All tenants out by spring. Craig signed the letter of intent on a Wednesday and said nothing to anyone. The following Monday, he walked into Amma's braids at 8 a.m. Dzifa was mid-braid on her first client. She looked up. Craig, she had never called him anything else. He had never been the kind of landlord you called Mr. I need to talk to you. He didn't sit. He stood in the center of the salon like a man who knew he owned the floor. Your lease is up end of April. I'm not renewing. Dzifa's hand stilled in her client's hair. I beg your pardon. I'm selling the property. All tenants out by April 15th. That is 4 months. That's correct. Dzifa set down her comb, carefully, the way you set something down you might otherwise throw. Craig, I have been in this unit for 3 years. I have never missed a payment, not once. That's appreciated. It doesn't change anything. My mother's name is on that sign, Dzifa said. Her voice was very even. This business is the only thing she left me a reason to build. Craig looked at the sign. He looked back at Dzifa. April 15th, he said. He walked out. Dzifa's client, Rosette, who had been coming every 3 weeks for 2 years, who had watched Kojo's university photos go up on the wall one by one, reached up and touched Dzifa's hand. Baby, Rosette said softly. I'm fine, Dzifa said. She picked up her comb. Her hands shook for exactly 3 seconds. Then they steadied. Her mother's hands had braided through worse than this. That evening, she sat on the bench outside after locking up. The street was cold and mostly empty. She didn't go inside. Mawuli came. She didn't know how he knew to come. He simply sat beside her and didn't speak first. The landlord is selling, she said. April 15th. I have to be out. Tell me. She told him everything. Craig, the developer, the letter of intent, the 4 months, the glass tower that would wear her mother's corner like it had never meant anything. Mawuli listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer solutions she had already run through. He just listened, the way someone does when they understand that certain things need to be said out loud before they can be survived. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. What would your mother say, he asked, if she were sitting here right now? Dzifa laughed, a short, wet sound. She would say, a seed does not see the sun from underground, but it still grows, because growing is what it was made to do. Then keep growing, Mawuli said. Don't stop yet, Dzifa, not yet. She looked at him, this man in his faded jacket and his worn boots, steady and warm on a cold November bench. What can either of us do, she asked. He looked at the strip mall, at the signs in each window, at the lights still on in the grocery across the lot. He looked the way a man looks when he is making a decision he has already made. More than you think, he said quietly. Soon. Dzifa did not sleep well that night. She lay in the dark running numbers that would not balance, thinking about Kojo's January tuition, thinking about Rosette, thinking about her mother's name on a sign she could not afford to carry somewhere new. Sis Kojo's voice came through the wall. I'm fine, go back to sleep. I'm not sleeping, come here. She went to his doorway. He was sitting up in the dark, the way he used to as a small boy when he sensed something was wrong and didn't know how to name it. Tell me, he said. She told him. She hadn't meant to, but Kojo had always had that quality. He made truth easier than silence. He listened. Then he pulled his duvet aside and patted the mattress next to him, the way their mother used to do, making space. She sat. You know what Mama would do, he said. Grow, Dzifa said. Grow, he agreed. And she would also braid someone's hair and take their $40 and figure out the rest in the morning. He knocked his shoulder gently against hers. You've survived every single other thing. You'll survive this too. You don't know that. I know you, he said. That's the same thing. Dzifa leaned her head on her brother's shoulder. She did not cry. She did not have to. She went to sleep. On the morning of the 42nd day, Dzifa unlocked Amma's braids at 6:30, brewed her tea, wrapped her last piece of homemade kelawele in foil. She was about to carry it out to the bench. But when she opened the door, the bench was empty. A black Cadillac Escalade was parked at the curb. A man in a charcoal 3-piece suit stepped out of the driver's side, walked around the car, and opened the rear door with one clean motion. Mawuli stepped out. Not in the faded canvas jacket, not in the worn boots. in a dark wool overcoat that sat on his shoulders, the way things sit when they are made for exactly those shoulders. He carried a leather document folder. He stood in the gray morning light on Eglinton West, and he looked like a man who owned the weather. Dzifa stood in her doorway, the foil-wrapped kelaweli still in her hand. He crossed the pavement toward her. Every step was measured and deliberate, the walk of a man who entered rooms before he walked into them. He stopped at the entrance to Amma's braids. He opened the folder. "My name is Mawuli Darko," he said. "I am the founder of Darko Community Holdings. We invest in commercial real estate across Ontario and Alberta, specifically to preserve small business corridors in neighborhoods facing gentrification pressure." He held out a document. "As of 9 o'clock this morning, I own this strip mall, the adjacent lot, and the parking structure behind it." He held her gaze. "I paid $26 million, $4 million above Craig Holloway's best offer. His agent called my acquisitions team last Thursday. The papers closed this morning." Dzifa looked at the paper. She did not take it. She looked at him. "All existing leases are honored," Mawuli continued. "All rent rates are frozen for 3 years, then reviewed only against actual operational costs, not market speculation. Amma's Braids is not going anywhere. Neither is the patty shop, neither is the grocery. This block stays exactly as it is." Dzifa's mouth opened. Nothing came out for a long moment. "Mawuli," she whispered, "who are you?" "I am the man you brought tea to every morning for 6 weeks, he said. "The man you gave your breakfast to, when you had very little left in your thermos. The man you sat with on a cold bench and talked to about your mother and your brother and what it means to give from what you don't have." He stepped closer. "I came to this neighborhood because I needed to understand it before I invested in it. I have learned the hard way that you cannot know a place from a boardroom. You have to sit in it. You have to taste its food. You have to watch how its people move through their mornings." His voice was very quiet now. The street sounds fell back the way they do when something important is being said. "In 6 weeks, I saw this entire block through your eyes, Dzifa. I watched how your clients walk in carrying something they don't name and leave differently. I watched Auntie Perpetua next door give patties to the school kids every Friday without them having to ask. I watched Mr. Asare at the grocery carry bags for the elderly women who couldn't manage. This is not a strip mall. It is a community that happens to occupy commercial space." He paused. "Your mother's name should not be on a sign that is torn down for a glass tower. I am not willing to let that happen." From the patty shop doorway, Auntie Perpetua's voice rang across the parking lot like a bell. "I knew it. From the first day that man showed up in those boots, I said to my daughter, I said, something is not right with this picture. A man who sits that straight does not belong on a bench. Did I not say it? Did I not say it to you?" Someone laughed. Then 2 people. Then the small crowd that had quietly gathered. Rosette arriving early for her appointment, Mr. Asare from the grocery wiping his hands on a cloth, a delivery driver who had simply stopped walking, broke into applause. Real applause, the kind that has nothing to do with performance. Dzifa laughed through her tears. She held out the foil-wrapped kalowali. "It is cold now," she said. Mawuli took it. "Then it matches the morning," he said. "I have been eating cold kalowali for 6 weeks. I have developed a preference." Mawuli did not move quickly with the things that mattered. He was methodical. He began with the building's neglected repairs, the things Craig Holloway had let slide for years. Proper heating in every unit, a new roof section over the grocery, the parking lot repaved. He hired from the neighborhood local contractors, whose names he had gathered from Auntie Perpetua, who considered knowing everyone a professional obligation and managed it accordingly. He called Kojo directly, which surprised Kojo considerably. "I understand you're studying water systems engineering," Mawuli said. "Yes, sir. My company is co-funding a clean water infrastructure pilot in 3 communities next summer, 2 in Ghana, 1 in Senegal. We need research support. Your sister did not ask me to call you. She would probably have words about it." Kojo was quiet a moment. "How long have you known her?" 6 weeks. Another pause. "Do you know what she gave up so I could stay in school?" "Not the full picture," Mawuli said honestly, "but I know the shape of it." Kojo said nothing for a long time. She always says the pot never empties, he finally offered. She is right, Mawuli said. Because of people like her, it never does. As for Craig Holloway, the 26 million went through cleanly, and Craig considered himself very well compensated for what he had never particularly cared about. He moved on to other properties. He continued as he had always continued, without looking back, without reflection. The reflection came later, as it always does for men who defer it too long. 8 months after the sale closed, a fire broke out in one of his other buildings. The electrical system had not been maintained in 6 years. 2 families lost everything they owned overnight. The city investigated. Inspectors moved through his remaining properties with the thoroughness that should have come years earlier. 17 outstanding violations across 4 buildings. His insurance did not cover the scope of the liability claims that followed. Craig Holloway, who had spent 2 decades extracting quietly from people who had nowhere else to go, discovered that extraction has a ledger, too. He did not come to Amma's braids. He had enough remaining shame to know he had no standing there. But Dzifa heard about what had happened to him. She heard about the fire and the families and the bills that kept arriving. She thought about it for several days in the quiet way she sat with difficult things, without rushing toward a conclusion. Then she picked up her comb and kept braiding. Mawuli proposed on a Sunday in April, the first genuinely warm Sunday after a very long winter, the kind of Sunday when Toronto suddenly remembers it has a spring and acts surprised. He did not propose at a restaurant. He did not propose with champagne. He brought 2 cups of tea to the bench outside Amma's braids, the bench that was still there, still the same bench, and he sat in the same spot where she had first brought him his cup, and he waited. Dzifa came out at 6:45. She stopped when she saw the 2 cups. "You made tea," she said. "I tried," he said. "I want to be honest with you before we go any further. It is not very good." She sat down, she took the cup, she drank. Her expression was very diplomatic. "Mawuli, I know. This is genuinely not very good. I know. I don't have your hands. I don't have 40 years of practice. I don't have your mother's recipe, and I suspect I never will." He reached into his coat pocket and took out a small box. Inside, a thin gold band. He turned it so she could see the engraving on the inner face. 2 small words, "The bench." "What I have," he said, "is this morning, and every morning that follows it, and the intention to sit beside you on this bench until we are old enough to require proper chairs with lumbar support." He looked at her steadily and without pretense. "I am not a simple man, Dzifa, but I sat still long enough on this bench to become an honest one. And the most honest thing I can tell you is this. Your mother's voice is in everything you do. I am a better man for having been still enough to hear it." From inside the salon, Kojo's voice came through the window. "She's already crying, sir. That means yes, you can stop now." Dzifa's voice cracked into a laugh. "Am I wrong?" She looked at Mawuli, his eyes dark, patient, full of a steadiness she had never once seen waver, waited. "No," she said softly, "he's not wrong." Mawuli slipped the ring onto her finger there on the bench on Eglinton West, with Auntie Perpetua already hollering congratulations from the patty shop doorway, and Rosette arriving for her appointment and stopping dead in the parking lot with both hands over her mouth, and a sound coming out of her that was not quite a word, but contained everything words mean. The morning felt like the kind of morning her mother would have called intentional. They married 5 months later, not in a banquet hall. In the salon, after hours, chairs pushed aside, string lights hung between the drying hoods, 60 people filling a room built for 12. Kojo walked his sister down the aisle in a suit he had pressed 3 times, because once was not enough for this. His hands trembled, but his chin stayed level, because he was his mother's son, and his mother's sons did not look at the floor. When he placed Dzifa's hand in Mawuli's, he said, "Bring her real tea every morning, not whatever that was on the bench." Everyone laughed. Then everyone cried. That is the nature of weddings in families like this. A laugh that becomes a cry that becomes something you carry for the rest of your life and are grateful for every single day of it. Mawuli's toast was 3 sentences, his father's son all the way. The river does not drink its own water. The tree does not eat its own fruit. But tonight, I am the luckiest man alive to sit at this table. Amma was there in the kelewele and the groundnut soup and the jollof rice that covered the long folding tables end to end. She was there in the sign above the door that no one had ever taken down. She was there in her daughter's hands, in the way Dzifa held her husband's face that evening, and said something too quiet for anyone else to hear, something that belonged only to them and perhaps to Amma, wherever she was watching from. The pot that feeds others is never empty. It never was. So here is what I need you to take from this. Dzifa did not bring Mawuli tea because she thought he was worth something. She brought it because she believed everyone was. She gave from a thermos that had very little left in it, from a morning that had a great deal to carry, from a heart that had been taught, very deliberately, very carefully, over many years, never to lock the pot. And the world, which does not always move quickly but does eventually move, returned to her everything she had given, and more than she had thought to ask for. The next time you pass someone sitting still in the cold, someone who is not holding a sign, not asking for anything, just sitting, look twice. You do not know what kind of eyes they have until you stop. You do not know whose child they are. You do not know what they are carrying, or what they have learned, or what a single cup of tea on a Tuesday morning in October might mean to them. You do not have to be rich to give something that changes a life. You just have to be willing. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Ancient African Folktales and turn on your notifications. We tell these stories because they are true, not in the way news is true, but in the way proverbs are true. In the way your grandmother's voice is true when you hear it in your own mouth 20 years after she is gone. We will be here every week. The pot is never empty.